Hi everyone, a warm welcome back to my channel for those who already know me, and a big hello to those who are new. My name is Nidia B and I focus on various different forms of literature that have either inspired me or shaped me or just plain entertained me. Today's video is focusing specifically on a self-help book that has helped me over the years and a theme that has cropped up in conversations, and that is on the issue of fear. And I chose this topic because I have had several conversations this week with different people, and that was a theme that kept emerging, and I just thought it would be great to just do a video focused on this topic and perhaps looking at a book that has helped me over the last few years. And that book is Susan Jeffers' Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It was written in 1987 and it's just been really popular ever since in self-help circles, in spiritual circles, in recovery circles, and I thought I would be just touching upon this. One thing I just want to note is, I say the word fear, but many people might think, well, I'm not sure about that word specifically, or I don't feel fear. But I also want to say that this covers issues such as anxiety, feeling stress, feeling pressure. For me, it also includes and encompasses feeling threatened. But for me, fear is like a very, very broad range, and we can have underlying feelings of fear when it comes to facing daily situations, all the way to perhaps some major event that we're working towards in our life. And sometimes fear happens because of external factors and external changes, or it can happen because inside of ourselves we are confronting or just basically opening the door to something that we haven't really looked at before. So anyway, before I get distracted, let me just come back to this book, because this is really going to be the main topic and why I'm referring to this book. So yeah, I came across this several years ago and I read it, and the first time I did read it I kind of like whizzed through it, and then a little while later I came back to it because I realized it had some really good stuff and key points in it. And one of the things that I think that this book really one of the main points that this book I took away from it was that first and foremost is that Susan Jeffers did an amazing job of just looking at the topic of fear in itself and disarming it. She begins by just talking about the fact that we all feel fear. It's nothing unique, or in the sense that nothing that we should be ashamed of. And she also goes into the fact that, one of the memories that I took away from this book was how even as children, or just the way we were raised, well-meaning adults around us have a tendency to sometimes say things such as be careful, and how later on in life that be careful can become quite hindering, because then every time we try and do something, we might feel a little bit too hesitant, let's put it that way, to do something. So for me, this book was really good at opening my eyes to the fact that perhaps I have been preconditioned, or as a human, as humans, we can already have this feeling of fear beyond what animals might be feeling, because of the fact that we've taken it on into the subconscious and then we bring it into the conscious, and how we might be operating from a base of fear that we've already had within us, ingrained as children. So so that was one of the big points that I took away from it. The other thing that Susan Jeffers says, and I really found very helpful, was that we need to not punish ourselves for feeling fear. That is another thing that she goes on to, that sometimes as children, or just throughout our lives, we might have been told, when we're having fear, just to push it down and just get on with it. And one of the things she says is actually that it's good to acknowledge the fear, and it's good to just kind of like note that it is there, rather than just wishing it away or pushing it away. And I really like that, because it helped me to just think that I was not going to have to deal with anything in life as if like I had a boulder on me, and you know, I could acknowledge that I was facing a fear. The other thing that she goes on to say is that a good way to look at fear is to be able to peel off the layers from it. So first and foremost, you know, I might be afraid of something which I would think is like might be a fear of crowds. But then she tries to help, you know, pull away the layers of it, you know, which is below that. Is it to do with an anxiety around too many people? Is it an anxiety to do with I feel I can't cope? So yeah, so she's very, very good at helping also people to see that where does this fear really come from, what is driving it, and to slowly start peeling away the layers that drive us towards our fear. And you know, one of the things that I also learned from this book was that she is very good at helping us, sorry, she helped me as well, to realize that new fears will always be cropping up, and that is a part of life. And I had never thought about it that way, that actually when we experience something, or when I experience something, that dispels fear. But before I've actually had the experience of it, I am actually going to have some fear. And somewhere in my psyche, as I became an adult, I had this feeling that I shouldn't have this fear. It should be gone by now. And what she's very good at is that if we're living, we're always going to have new experiences, and with new experiences will come some aspects of fear. So for me, this was really eye-opening in that sense, that she kind of like, you know, for me, it was just became clear the more I read the book, the more it became clear that having fear is actually quite healthy. It's just a part of life. And one of the things that she reminded me of when I was reading this book many years ago, and I heard it recently actually, is that there's a saying that I heard, which is that action precedes motivation. And that took me a long time to understand, but I now get it, that I first sometimes have to act before I can even like something, because if I think about it, then I actually can drive myself into a space of fear. But if I just do it sometimes, then that dispels that fear, and it dispels that uncertainty. And that's helped me a lot as well in terms of facing my fears. And the other thing that I remember when I read this book, and it has since come true for me, and I'm still working on it. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's that when I feel fear, and then I go ahead with an action, and you know, sometimes I have to call someone, or sometimes I have to kind of like remind myself and connect with my inner higher self, is that after I've done the activity, I do feel a lot better. So one of the things that she talks about in this book is how facing our fears actually helps to build confidence and self-confidence. And that's been really also good for me, that you know, so going back to the beginning, she helps to take away the shame. She confirms that other people feel fear. She talks about the different layers of fear and the different forms of fear that it can manifest in. And then finally, you know, one of the things that she reminds me of is that action actually helps to dispel fear through new experiences, or when it's a new experience, I will have some kind of fear crop up. And you know, I am going to gain confidence through going through with my action. So yeah, so these are some of the pieces that I've taken away from this book, and there's a lot more to it. The other thing that I found in this book, which was fantastic, and I still find it really important for me today, is on the issue of seeing what I'm about to encounter in different ways. And I kind of like noted it, that she talks about choices, and the fact that instead of thinking that I have to do something, if I think instead that I choose to do it, that helps to empower me. And today, the way I think about choices is to discern, to have a look at kind of like what's good for me, what's healthy, What can I let go of? And so that takes it from a level of really high anxiety for me to a much more calmer space of, actually, if I have choices, then I can decide, and that's quite empowering for me. The other thing that she talks about is excitement, and how when we start to see things as a choice, we can be excited about them as well. And the way I think about that is anticipation. So today, when I have something new that I'm going to encounter, or something that I'm not too clear about, I can also have this feeling of anticipation, and the fact that something new will be revealed through the process. And then finally, she talks about action, which I always see as movement. That when I am doing something and I'm going through the fear of it, there is a movement, an internal movement, as well as something happening on the outside. And I think that's also a good way for me to just feel kind of like that energy. So yeah, so this is something else that I've taken away from just doing any activity, where there is this feeling that how am I gonna be able to do this? The last thing I want to just say is, I'm going to put the book down now, but I'm just going to say this because this week has been a few discussions on fear. Is also, I've heard a lot that the opposite of fear is faith, and sometimes for me that can be like a really big bridge to cross. So I sometimes use the words instead of trust and building trust, and that takes time. So for me to overcome fear, sometimes it does take time because I'm building trust in the process. And the other thing that I've found very useful for me is that when I have a fear, sometimes I need to do research and have inquiry. And again, that takes time and it takes patience, but that's okay. But it also allows me space and breathing room, let's call it that way, for me to go through a process. So I just want to leave anybody who's watching this video with that might be encountering fear, that there are ways to go ahead, and it can be done in a much more calmer, simplified, or a manner of process, rather than just pushing and willing ourselves through it. And and that it is possible. So that's the message that I'm going to leave everyone with today. And finally, my questions for you are, and sorry I didn't say this earlier, but my questions for you as viewers are there points that you find helpful to remember when you're facing a fear? Or is there a particular piece of literature, because this is BookTube, so I want to go back to that. Is there a particular piece of literature that has helped you face your fear? And perhaps it's fictional, it's not necessarily a self-help book or a spiritual book. So please do share with me here and leave your comments below. Remember to like this video and click on the notification bell, because that's the only way really that you'll know that there's a new video that's been uploaded. But I just want to say thank you for watching.